Hello, my friend. I am Jinx, your host and imaginary friend, and I would like to thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Full Writes Again, the podcast where I discuss what happens when you release a writer into the wild and he gets a chance to explore the world. For those of you who like to read and for those of you who like to write, this is the podcast for you, because I plan to discuss topics such as plot development, world building, character creation, and even character motivation. If you're interested in any of that, please stay tuned. With that being said, let's get the show on the road. Now it's time for a scenario. Imagine you're part of a small squad of 9 units. And you've been in combat for the last several days, slowly progressing further and further into foreign terrain against all these other enemies. You've come across units of 6, you've come across units of 12, 14, other units of 9, and it is starting to wear you down. But because it's part of a military force, you know you have to continue. There is no option to stop. You just need to fight on, otherwise your life will be on the line. And on day 7 of your fighting, you suddenly hear thunder in the air and see lightning up above. And out of nowhere, a giant boulder falls from the sky, crushing one of your companions. Super confused because you're on flat ground and you don't know where that would have come from. You look up into the sky and what you see astonishes you. There are giants sitting up there just watching you guys fight. You don't know what to expect, you don't know what's going on, but you're confused. You think you're partially battle delirious, part of you thinks you're drunk, part of you thinks you've already died, but you still feel alive. What happens next? Now imagine this. You've decided to go to a convention for Wargaming. You've never been to one before, so you don't know what to expect, and you're excited for the unknown. You show up early, you find your table, you start getting set up, and gradually more and more contestants start showing up also, taking their own tables. You hear an announcement over the intercom saying that the first games will take place in an hour, and gradually more and more people show up, filling up the entire space, and that hour quickly disappears. Now you've hit a point where it's a 10-minute countdown, 5-minute countdown, 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start rolling dice. And as soon as everyone starts rolling the dice, the first die hits the table, every miniature in the room comes to life. And they start attacking the contestants themselves and the players. What happens next? Now, time for a third scenario. Imagine that you've been gaming all day, Wargaming particularly, and you're on your 4th match of the day and you're really exhausted from it. This is a lot more gaming than you've been doing ever. Prior competitions, you've only gone up to 3 matches, so 4 is a lot. And you really can't think now. So instead of being tactical and strategic like you've been in all your other matches, you're going in for a bloodbath. You're throwing your horde team against an elite team, and your miniatures are dying off one by one. And you're so close to being tabled that you only have 1 miniature left on the field against 4 of your opponents. And just as you're getting ready to initiate the final round of combat with your opponent, you swap places with your miniature. That one is now the player, and you are now a character on the board, up against 4 elites. You don't know how it happened, but you're terrified. What happens next? So obviously, none of these plots actually happened to me. I did not experience a sudden shift with my characters and miniatures. I did not have them come to life. I did not have any of that happen. But I did go to a Wargaming tournament recently, and it was an experience. I didn't think too much of it before I got there. I've been playing Warhammer and various other war games for the last several months because I needed a new hobby and one that allowed me to socialize because writing clearly does not. So I decided to join the tournament, meet up with some people, and play some games. And I got there, and it was pretty empty. I got there, and there was a giant conference room with probably 50 or so tables set up. And each of those tables, you were able to play 2 to 3 different games on. And gradually people started showing up, and the room was full of people and noise and people gaming. It was fun. Not an experience I ever expected to have. But that did lead to the question of, how can you incorporate wargaming into writing? There's a lot of different ways, I realized. Besides the several scenarios I gave at the beginning of what happens if a wargamer suddenly switches places with his characters and now he's experienced that, or if his characters are sentient and they start taking over the place, or even if the characters themselves have a moment of realization and realize that there is something bigger than them in the world that could be controlling them, and they no longer have free will. They actually are fulfilling prophecy and moving at the whims of giant game players. All interesting ideas that could happen when it comes to wargaming. I wouldn't have known it if I had not gone to the tournament. I would not have thought of them at all. Sure, I probably could have come across these ideas anywhere else or at one of my normal hobby games, but it came to me through the tournament, and I decided to use that. And just to put it out there, I did not win my tournament at all. I did absolutely awful, which is fine. That might have led to me thinking other things, and it definitely did lead to one of the plots there. Because in reality, I have never played 4 games in a row. Each of those games can take 2 to 3 hours, depending on how fast you're moving. And there's a lot of strategy involved, so your brain is completely taxed on what is going on and what's happening to it. And as that happened, my last match in there really was just me throwing my team against the other team, and it was a bloodbath all around. Which, if I was thinking about it in terms of my miniatures, they probably would have hated that. They're just being sacrificed like lambs to the slaughter, and all for my amusement and enjoyment. What would happen if they suddenly had control? Are they going to treat me differently than I treated them? Are they going to not play at all? And because they understand how well it's treated and how the miniatures are treated, they don't want to put others through that because they know how awful it is, even though I put them through it. A lot of possibilities there when it comes to writing. Don't expect others to really see this sort of thing, because wargaming, as big as it is, isn't always the most popular thing. I did realize while playing this game over the last several months that there's another benefit to it, though. It can help teach you action sequences for other novels. If you have a military style story and you're now facing one squad against another, if you actually reenact it in a war game, you can kind of see how people would intentionally respond, or what kind of buildings they would hide behind and gain advantages here and there. And if you're playing against someone else, you're not coming up with the entire plot by yourself. Someone else is actually responding to how you act. And now you're also required to respond to how someone else acts, and you can include that into your story. The small skirmishes are helpful that way. And if you really wanted to, you can expand wargaming into a lot larger game format. Sure, in Warhammer Kill Team, which I primarily play, it really is about teams of 5 to 12 battling it out against each other. Yeah, there are other teams that can go slightly larger, but those are pretty small. But if you wanted to, you can expand that into bigger conflict and get into actual Warhammer, where you're sending armies against each other, and now you're not just doing a dozen or so miniatures, you're now doing several dozen at once, or several hundred. It can get it larger and larger, and seeing how those battles play out can help you write your actual story. A small skirmish, yes, that might take a part of a small plot and a couple pages in your novel, but if you want to do an actual entire skirmish, you could probably write an entire novel based on one giant Warhammer game, because there's so many parts involved in it. And if you expanded upon it further, you think, okay, this giant game is taking long, so yes, in my story, it's just a giant war that is happening, and now there's breaks in between as each of the players and contestants and forces are sleeping for the night or anything like that. Now, if someone attacks, then you can include a night raid or anything like that. Wargaming gives you a lot of possibilities when it comes to action, and I think that's amazing. Who doesn't want a good action flick or action combat, and who doesn't want good action when they're reading a story? We all know when you read some novels, okay, it's easy to skip past it because nothing happens, but if you can actually describe the elements and help visualize it so your readers are there, actually experiencing what you're writing, that's so much cooler. I know in some of my horror stories, yes, it's a horror story, and wargaming is not necessarily for horror, but I'm able to incorporate those action elements into anything. One of the maps for Kill Team, Galadark, it takes place on a spaceship and hallways and all that, and if you make it so your characters are kind of scared and timid and don't want to go through doors and see what's on the other side, that helps with that. I recently sent some of my characters in one of my stories down a lot of hallways, and they don't know what's going to happen in the next room. Eventually it came to the point where the rooms opened up and it led to a bloodbath. That is something I could completely reenact it and kill team, because it's a possibility there and easy, especially in Gallo Dark terrain. They go down a whole hallway and eventually it opens up and boom, bloodbath. They don't know it's coming either. So you can pretty much fit your wargaming into any genre you want. You may have to make it work a little bit more, and sometimes you may have to kind of tweak the rules here and there and format to make it fit your genre more, whether it's into action, adventure, sci-fi, horror, anything like that. I don't know how much I would try it for a romance novel, but I'm sure you could probably get some reenactment in there, whether it's even some type of duel for a character's love. You now have your wargame is now one miniature versus another miniature, and you're trying to get it so whoever wins the duel wins the affection. Lots of possibilities on that. I don't necessarily know how it's going to happen in wargaming, but I don't need to know it all. I just need to find inspiration for myself and hopefully influence others to find inspiration for their own novels. And hopefully that does help you. Hopefully you're starting to learn after listening to several of these episodes that inspiration can come from anywhere. It's just a matter of how you look at the world around you and whatever experiences you're having. Every single one of us out there has different experiences, and we can each use those to better our novels because we can pull the inspiration from them. No two people are going to have the same life, meaning no two people are going to have the exact same story. But unfortunately, my friend, it is time for me to leave you and call it a day. But before I do, I have a writing prompt for you. Write a story about an individual who scheduled a time with a buddy to go play a war game. The individual, so excited for the game, got to the local game shop early and set up everything. But when the time arrived for the game to actually start, his buddy never showed up. Instead, the individual was transported to the world of his miniatures and is forced to face off against them. What happens next? Now, I don't care what genre you write or what kind of story it is, if it's long story, short story, flash fiction, or anything. All I care about is you have fun with it and make something out of it. It might give you inspiration for a bigger story. It might just give you practice on writing action scenes. Whatever it is, make the most of it. But now it really is time for me to leave you and call it a day. If you enjoyed the content of today's episode, please like and subscribe. And if you have any writer friends out there, please send them my way. I'd love to have them listening. And please be on the lookout for the next episode, when Jinks'd discovers what happens when you release a writer into the wild and he gets to explore the world of extreme sports. Ta-ta and have a good one.